Good day, YouTube. This is Jay Money with Falling Forward Financial. Just an update here on HITI. I've talked about them quite a few times here on the channel. Probably one of my favorite MJ stocks, even though they are down just like a lot of the other ones here over the last year. So you can see they're down about 70% in the last year, down over 47% here in the last 3 months. So it's kind of an interesting dip there. I think I bought a couple shares right in there. Now that I remember that price, should have bought a bunch more. That was an excellent buy right there. Down in the past month, over 15%. Here in the past week, they're actually in the green, 11%. Haven't seen that in a long time. And here today, they're actually in the green. So again, this is HITI, ticker HITI. If you don't know much about them, they manufacture, retail, MJ, smoking accessories, and so on. Like I said, I've talked about them numerous times. I'll link that in the description. Founded in 2009. Market cap of 137 million. High today of 226. Low of 212. 52-week high of 798. And a low of $1.73. Not a whole lot of volume on this one. 78,000. On the average, and a little bit higher today at 114,000. Here's a look at their earnings. Next is expected on September 13th. Looks like back in March, tried to buy some for $431. Glad that didn't fill. $386. $380. Glad none of those filled. I have shares in a different brokerage now. I switched, transferred out of Robinhood, so don't know if I'll go back or not. But I still use them for video purposes. But what I could find is HITI to acquire 9 operating retail stores from Choom. So again, ticker HITI. It's further expanding its brick and mortar retail MJ operations and entering the British Columbia market through a binding agreement pursuant to which HITI will acquire 2 operating retail MJ stores in British Columbia, 6 operating retail MJ stores in Alberta, and 1 operating retail in Ontario from Choom. And there's your ticker CHOOF. It's my first time hearing about Choom. If you have HITI or Choom, you can leave that in the comments. And there you are, HITI and Choom. I'm thrilled to be announcing this deal today, which represents a third public company whose assets we have integrated into the HITI portfolio since November 2020, following the acquisitions of Metagrowth and Smoke Cartel. So I've always liked some of their names that they have. It's kind of unique, but will make the integration of Choom into the Kenna brand seamless, stated the CEO of HITI. While Choom had 17 operational stores before entering the proceedings, we are able to acquire the 9 locations that we want across 3 provinces at an attractive price of 3.8 times annualized adjusted EBITDA. So just adding to the HITI portfolio. Transaction, which is an arm's length transaction, is subject to, among other things, receipt of required TSX Venture approval, court approval, so all kinds of approval. And so again, the transaction may close in multiple tranches depending on the speed of provincial regulatory approvals. Inclusive of the stores following the closing, HITI will have at least 43 stores in Ontario, 2 in British Columbia, 72 in Alberta, and 136 stores nationwide. So when I first started covering them last fall, I think they were trying to get up to 100. I think they had about 75 at the time. And so they just keep growing and keep expanding, and now they're buying other stores. So but here's just another article, and as you can see, this is just out today. So HITI is in Calgary, and they signed a deal to buy 9 stores from Choom for $5.1 million in shares. So we'll see what that does to the stock price in time. So HITI says for 3 months ended April 30th, the stores generated collectively annualized revenue of $10.2 million, and maybe that will be added to with the HITI brand name on there. So we'll just have to wait and see. But every time I talk about them, they're constantly expanding, and it's definitely going to be a long-term hold. And so this one just keeps growing and expanding and buying and opening up new stores. Again, kind of some of the same information that we already went over. So moving on over here to Reddit. And that's what I've always said, severely undervalued. That's why I started really watching it and talking about it and buying shares in it. Over here on MSN Money, currently showing it at $227 with a buy rating and an upside to $10.08 out of 6 analysts. So this one's always had great ratings on it. So another reason why I've really looked into it. But back to their brands, including Canna Cabana, New Leaf, MJ, Meta, Kush Bar, Grass City, Smoke Cartel, and CBD City. So they got some really interesting names. So, but that's it for HITI. If you have a HITI, go ahead and list that in the comments along with your cost basis, any other information you'd like to share on this one. And if you haven't smashed that like button yet, go ahead and hit that for me, as well as subscribing and hit the bell so you're notified of when the next videos drop. Again, this is Jay Money, Falling Forward Financial. Happy trading, happy investing, stay green. Cheers.